Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is my review of the CGS Suppressor's Mod9 SK suppressor. What got my attention about the Mod9 SK initially is the fact that it's not modular, and that's a little rare these days. Most people make suppressors that can be stepped down, or you can take 2 or 3 baffles, 2 or 3 inches off of them to give you a modular suppressor. So if you want maximum hearing suppression, hearing support, you can go for the full length. And if you want a shorter, more maneuverable, cooler looking can, you can take the front end off. I've done quite a few reviews on suppressors that work just like that. The CGS suppressor, the Mod9 SK, is definitely a departure from that. It comes in 2 different lengths. I picked up the SK length because I actually do prefer a shorter suppressor. You may be wondering why. It's something I've talked about in videos before, but never specifically. For me, a suppressor is intended to bring the report of the gunshot to a non-pain inducing level. I consider suppressors to be muzzle devices, and you'll notice in a lot of the videos when you see me running a suppressor, I'm still wearing ear pros because I'm doubling up or tripling up in many cases, depending on how enclosed the space is. Like if I'm working in a shoot house or something, I usually wear inner ear protection, outer ear protection, and then run a suppressor. Reason for that is I like to be able to hear, and already having hearing damage from occupational hazards, well, it just makes sense. The Mod9 SK is multi-cal capable. Predominantly it's going to be 9mm, but I also ran quite a bit of 300 blackout subsonic because it is rated for that, and it is full auto rated, which we'll get to. Weighing in at just over 6 ounces with just under 5 inches of length and a diameter of 1.3. The diameter I thought was a little bit curious because generally when people go with a shorter length, especially a non-modular suppressor, they tend to increase the diameter to increase the volume, to increase the tone, or improve the tone, if you will, of the suppressor. But I think CGS had maybe the same thinking I did in the creation of the suppressor, the fact that it's going to give you on handgun length and longer, even on a 9-inch 300 blackout shooting 300 blackout subsonic, it's got a good tone to it. I can't really quantify. If I'm shooting subsonics through it, it does perform very well. If I shoot supersonics through it, obviously I'm going to notice a change in tone. It's going to have that supersonic crack. There's no getting away from that. However, the tone is, I can't say hearing safe because, you know, you shoot it fast enough in a short enough period of time and it's not going to meet the standard definition of hearing safe because you're exposing yourself to that decibel level in a short period of time repeatedly. However, it does bring it well below the pain threshold, and I do appreciate that. Even in enclosed spaces, the can's not uncomfortable to shoot. It's definitely spicy, especially on 300 blackout subsonic. That's a little spicy. But shooting 9mm, 115, 124, and then subsonic 9mm ammunition, the tone is surprisingly present. I think a lot of that owes to the fact that it's running on Orion baffles, which are a very well-known baffle design that have served a lot of different suppressors very, very well, and I think this one is no exception. The overall performance of the suppressor on a handgun was excellent. It's ideal really for a handgun, also submachine guns, but we'll get into that, because it doesn't have a lot of added length or a lot of added weight. You may be asking yourself, well, why didn't they go with a modular suppressor? Why didn't they create a suppressor that can be 2 different lengths at the same time versus creating a short one and a long one, and you've got to buy them separately? Modular suppressors are great. I've tested quite a few of them. There's quite a few suppressors that I do like. However, there is an inherent weakness in the design in the fact that you're threading on additional baffles. There's no weld there, and besides hand tightness, that's all you get. So prolonged use, heavy use, select fire, for those of you who have it, those threads are going to take a beating, and that's going to be where the can is going to fail, if it fails or when it fails. So having a dedicated length to me makes a whole lot of sense. And again, going back to how I consider suppressors, and this is just my opinion, it's just a muzzle device that provides a level of hearing protection above what unsuppressed would provide. So if I want to use a suppressor for a self-defense type situation, on a home defense gun, or for, you know, law enforcement or military for actual uses in that regard, this is going to give me, you know, a reasonable amount of exposure time to lessen my chances of hearing damage, which is the whole point of a suppressor to begin with. The piston assembly and blast baffles are both 17.4 stainless steel, which is an excellent choice. And then we've got a lot of 7075 T6 aluminum tube material, and forward of the blast baffle material are made out of that 7075 aluminum, which I think is a good choice considering we're predominantly going to be putting 9mm through this, or smaller, you know, 380, 22 if you really wanted to, going up to 300 blackout subsonic. You could probably shoot supersonic through it. It probably wouldn't be a great experience. That's why they generally specify this is for subsonic 300 blackout, not supersonic, although some cans can support both depending on configuration. But speaking specifically about the Mod9 SK, shooting 300 blackout subsonic, like, you definitely, it's subsonic. However, it's doing exactly what it should be doing, lessening the decibel report of the gunshot at the shooter's ear. And it performs well. It's just not something I wouldn't use this can on a 300 blackout unless I absolutely had to, if I needed that maximum length savings for maneuverability, which is not something I really necessarily need anymore. Not doing SWAT stuff, haven't been doing SWAT stuff for, you know, a long time now. So that's not a primary concern of mine. But for a handgun or a submachine gun or a PCC, or whatever my chosen home defense gun may be, this is going to give me some excellent length. Now, how is the overall performance? Well, I do a 2,000 round review. During this review, I shot 115, I shot 147, I shot 124 plus P, and I also shot 300 blackout subsonic 220 grain out of a 9-inch gun. And kind of, I've already talked about it on handguns, it performed excellent. Handguns are generally finicky with the suppressors that they like. I've got some guns that like a certain suppressor and they won't run very well with any other suppressor I put on them. My general litmus test for suppressors, if a Glock will run it, almost any gun will. And I found that to be the case with the Mod9 SK, shooting on a Glock 17, and then of course an FN 509, a Staccato P, and I also put it on a Smith & Wesson M&P for some time. Predominantly, most of the time, it spent its time on PCC submachine gun, Scorpion, and also my MP5. Which brings us to the burn down. After the first 500 rounds of getting kind of acclimated to the can, getting used to its performance, I went ahead and threw it on the MP5 for my 500 round burn down. If you're not familiar with the burn down, the whole purpose of the burn down is 500 rounds as quickly as possible to see if any issues arise that I wouldn't notice with the same round count over a much longer period of time. And because I have select fire and this thing's full auto rated, well, we're gonna do that. So here's your burn down. First to last round, no problems, both semi-auto and full auto. My biggest worry during a suppressor burn down for suppressors like this is that end cap is removable. I worry that thing's going to come loose. I worry the suppressor is going to come loose, but also when I come back to reload, I make sure and check, you know, my index point and make sure it's still hanging out where it should be. And for cans that don't have a specific marking, when I tighten them down for that 12 o'clock position, I'll usually use a little grease pen or something like that so I can see if the can starts to twist. Because in your enthusiasm, your suppressor may start to come loose and you may not notice it, and that's where baffle strikes happen. So paying attention to the suppressor tightness as well as the end cap, no issues there. However, throughout the 2,000 rounds, the end cap did start to come loose a few times, but that was from pretty heavy use, and it's kind of to be expected just based on the nature of the way the pressure relationship works inside the suppressor and the fact that it's a threaded end cap. It does come with a tool, tighten it down really well, but over 2,000 rounds, you're going to have to check that anyway. So how do I feel about the CGS Mod9 SK? If you're looking for ultra hearing attenuation, the quietest suppressor ever, this isn't it. But I don't think they're making any claims in that regard. This is a suppressor that gives you an excellent amount of modularity, gives you an excellent, or I should say, an excellent amount of maneuverability. If you have a gun that's already kind of long, but you want to suppress it, if you've got a 16-inch PCC, or you've got a, you know, a 7 or a 9-inch PCC pistol, or if you want to put it on a handgun but you don't want it to be ungodly long, this is a really good suppressor for that choice. Is this a suppressor I would be using all day long? Yeah, I would just wear ear pro with it, but I would do that anyway. I think that people want it both ways. They want to have excellent sound suppression, but also they want the can to be super short, like 2-3 baffles. It's just not going to happen. Not with current technology, not with physics being what they are. We're always going to have that trade-off. Now, they could have increased the diameter of the suppressor, kind of already talked about that, in order to add a little bit more, maybe drop in another decibel or two, which you wouldn't have noticed anyway. They could have changed the materials, but I think they've got a right balance, because this thing, it's so light and it can handle what a lot of heavier cans can handle. And it gives you the same sound suppression of cans in the same length category. So just kind of makes me wonder why I bought some of the other suppressors that I have, because this one, for the length and for the diameter, really fills that category very, very well. It's an excellent performing suppressor. Am I going to get the full-size one? Probably not. Not because I mean, I'm sure it's great. I'm just not interested for what I'm going to use this suppressor for. I'm not interested in a suppressor that's going to be that long. I've already got enough 9mm suppressors that can give me that category, but this is definitely a suppressor that's probably going to become my go-to for that shorter length. I think it's an excellent suppressor, and price-wise, it's well under $1,000. The pistons are readily available, and that's one thing that I do want to bring up. Generally, when I get a pistol suppressor, or even some rifle suppressors, I can interchange springs, pistons, spacers. The CGS, I tried that with some of the other manufacturer stuff I had, and no. Theirs is a very specific size, to where when I found when I was specifically looking for a spacer, taking the booster out of it so I could run it on an SMG, and I tried every spacer I had, and the one that came closest still left the rear cap 2 or 3 threads too high, so I wasn't willing to risk it. So I ordered CGS's specific spacer so I could run it on a PCC fixed barrel non-booster device. So definitely something to be aware of, because it doesn't ship with one, it just ships with the booster for 9mm, 1/2 by 28, I believe, and a spring. So if you want to run it on a fixed barrel, or you want to run it on a PCC or SMG, you're going to need that spacer. Definitely order it from them. Same with all the pistons. But if you're curious about my feelings on the CGS Mod9 SK, get one. In fact, if you want, get 2. I think it's an excellent suppressor that fills the category in which it's in very, very well. I'm Eric Allen with Stage Dynamics. Train accordingly.